extraordinary.
That look is pretty scary, isn't it?
It says it all.
His death stare is nothing to mess with. I mean, the only one who has anything on there is Nakamura. But let's take a look and see what happened in the opening.
It looks like a scotch, and the players are not. You see, they're not used to that delay as they're playing instantly. And as you said, Jen, use it or lose it, and they're just playing really rapid fire instead of using all of their 3 seconds.
Well, they know the openings, though. Right now, they don't really need to use the 3 seconds to reassess anything. Obviously, Garry was convinced he was going to play this version of Scotch that he used to defeat Anatoly Karpov in their epic World Championship match.
1990,
so
yes.
clearly, Wesley was prepared for this line as well, and now Wesley giving quite a bit of pause as Garry has not used any time so far to get to this position.
Exactly. Well, in fact, there are two moves for Wesley, either D7, D6, or knight B4. There's just simply no other choice. Other moves are just strategically really terrible for Wesley. So D6, and White has an option of going, no, actually, he must play knight B4, doesn't he?
Wow, he's just introduced this move, C5.
That looks really very strange move to my eyes. A very surprising decision by Wesley. So Queen E4 looks like an automatic.
Worse then, right?
Yeah, Garry has played G3, by the way, and he was very quick. So this move C5 is not a surprise for Garry. He played it very quickly.
G3 is the Engine's #1 move, in fact. So Garry quite comfortable where he is and going for the big pawn formation, guarding his pawn with F4.
Exactly, Bishop G7.
Yeah,
F4.
Black has to get D6 in at some point, or his position is going to be
strategically
ugly.
busted. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Because not only will he have a weak pawn on C5, but Garry's pawns will simply roll.
And we've seen knight B4 now. Knight B4 looks like a stutter step from a move ago. I don't like this position offhand for Wesley.
I mean, there are some little tactical ideas in the position. Maybe you could move bishop back to B7, and then after bishop G2 and queen G2, there's something happening on D3. But, of course, Garry played bishop to D2, and now rook D8 by Wesley, still trying to get this D6 move in at some point. And knight coming to D3 sometimes.
Yeah, well, knight C3 is an automatic. Garry has played it. Garry has ideas like bishop takes B4, knight D5 in mind. At some point, this big pawn wedge in the middle of the board, this pawn on E5 has to be dealt with, and either D6 or F6 is a necessity.
So Wesley has played the move castles, and now what about your idea of just taking on B4 and playing knight D5?
I like it. I don't like giving up the bishop right now. I'm thinking that castles, that knight on B4 is not running away anywhere.
Garry has a big lead on the clock, by the way. Look at that. He's been sitting there for about 30 seconds and still with a lead on the clock. So he's taking this right now as the moment when all the possibilities that he can control, he should study. And that exchange on B4 unquestionably is on his mind. But look at how quickly his clock is ticking down. After having that full minute on the clock, he's going down now very quickly to Wesley's time.
Intriguing. And let me just
critical position indeed. I mean,
big moment in the game.
Let me just flash back.
Exploded in that game, guys. Take a look. Yeah, go back. We go back to this position right here. Just a couple of moves, and you see the move A3. Well, you kind of went quickly there, Yaz. If we can come to this big board, we saw the move in this.
Castles, of course, had been played. Get the king into safety. And F7, F6, a big move by Wesley. Has he calculated accurately the consequences of E7, E6? Garry gets a pass pawn in the center of the board.
The Indians are saying that's a blunder.
Yeah.
That's a blunder according to the Indians. With bishop to D5 is the move that the Indians are giving. Bishop to D5, and then an actual sacrifice of the queen. And he had to sacrifice his rook in that position. He sacrificed an exchange, did Wesley, by taking on D5 in this position.
Right.
Because he simply was going to lose material, and this is his counterplay chance that he is hoping for. And now Garry up an exchange, but he will lose back the pawn at least after bishop takes,
I'm not sure. I'm not sure he's going to lose the pawn because
he's not.
There's a queen c4.
There's a trade of queens possible.
On queen d takes d5. There's a trade of queens when necessary. By the way, boldly pointing out the obvious, the rook on a1 is ready to munch that pawn on a7. This looks lost for
It is.
Wesley.
The engines are saying that this is busted. Down a full exchange. Exchange for a pawn. Well, not even a pawn. It's a full exchange in this position, and never going to get back real compensation. His pawns on the queen side look awful. They're going to drop like flies, and Wesley is in a completely lost position. This would be a terrific start for the former world champion Kasparov.
That's right. So if we play bishop takes e5, well, Garry can simply capture with the queen, and that's the big problem. If pawn takes, we get a lot of counterplay because our rook on f2 is pinned. We can maybe play bishop g4.
Exactly.
But no, this is
lost. The engines are giving this one as done. Just no real moves. He is taking on e5.
Queen takes e5.
And queen takes
a dominant retort.
That's right. Queen takes e5, and then we have to figure out some way to at least try to win that pawn back on d5.
He's taking some time, by the way, in this position as Kasparov, but queen takes is the only move to maintain an advantage, actually. Pawn takes allows bishop to b7, and problems start with the counterplay
on the long diagonal.
So Garry, of course, queen takes being the right move, and he has played it.
And Wesley trying desperately to get some counterplay with the move rook d8.
That came really fast.
Well, d6 though,
we could play. Yeah.
D6 is the engine's first move. D6 looks strong, but Garry has instead played rook to d1. Not the top move, but still winning.
But it is blitz, so we
No, I like this.
Still winning. Still winning. No, it's not.
But he's played another way to try to exchange queens. That's the thing. A lot of the tactics we see here are trading queens but losing a pawn from queen to c4 to d6. It's the exact same idea. Queen d4, because then all of your pawns are just going to drop off the board. So very thematic ideas here.
Interesting. Wesley, after queen a5, inviting the move rook a1 by Garry. Garry instead plays rook d2, and Garry's idea is very simple. He just basically, the rook on f2 is not working. He needs to bring that rook back to the e file, maybe play a move like h3. King g2 h3.
But rook a1 looked so good.
It did.
But rook e8 by Wesley, trying to get a little counterplay on the back rank. Simply king g2, no worries.
Nice.
You don't have to worry about the back rank if your king's on the second rank.
True that.
So
and h3, get that bishop out of there. Give your king some extra squares. And you know me, I love grabbing pawns. That a7 pawn looks delicious one day.
But the clock times now, guys, the clock times Garry, though he's up, he hasn't figured out exactly how to win yet. He has played the move h3, bishop back to f5, and now g4.
Excellent move. Excellent move. Get that bishop out of the way. By the way,
because we would have probably played queen to d7 to get a tiny bit of counterplay.
On
Stick
the
a
light
bishop on h3. Maybe rook e1 could be annoying at some point. This looks harder. I mean, for an amateur, like playing this and allowing bishop b4, it looks uglier, but actually the
king is going to be very safe. And by the way, having booted the bishop, two options now for white. d5, d6 is in the position, so you can play queen d5 and trade queens, as well as f5 and f6. And by the way, there's a pass pawn on the f file. Ooh.
c5, a little.
Queen f6, posting up, and it really looks killing now. d6. D6.
Just going for it. Is there any counterplay here for
super powerful move?
It's a crushing position in f5, blasting through. What a dominant performance by Kasparov as f5 lands on the board. He's going to open up the whole king side. This is just crushing.
Epic. Checkmating.
I mean, if c3 just takes on g6, should be winning.
Exactly.
Takes d2, queen f7, and queen h7, checkmate.
It's a forced mate.
By the way, Caruana is up a pawn in the other position as they're playing quickly. Not as sharp a position right now, but Caruana is up a pawn. But it's all about this game as Garry is showing his stuff, coming out the gates quickly. Look at this position.
Queen e7 check. Queen takes
dominance.
f8. Queen e7. Queen takes f8 check. A huge threat in the position. I think it's going to be resigns, guys. I really do.
This is just...
There's nothing to do. And look at Garry grab the queen.
Yeah.
Grab the queen. He said, this one will be on the board any second.
Exactly.
This is just completely busting. Also, isn't d8 queens just a threat as well? Queen moving over to c5.
No, I think queen e7 check is the dominant threat in the position.
And he's just played queen d6. Queen d6 with all the threats. Trade queens. and also sacrifice on F8. This is resignable. Only 10 seconds left. Wesley will probably resign on this move.
Yes,
and he has done so.
Bravo,
and there
Garry.
is Garry. Garry getting up on the board. First game, big victory for Garry. We were wondering what kind of form is he going to be in for the splits match.
From London to Taiwan, I've been all around.